Back when I was a kid, late-night programming like Adult Swim was a bit of a mystery to me at first in its original run in 2001. When I would every now and then catch shows like Aqua Teen Hunger Force when I felt like I had nothing better to do than sit around watching the dumbest and most hilarious of shows when I had the opportunity to during things like summer break or the weekends. Eventually, however, a bit of time after September 2001, was the first time I ever experienced anime besides Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon on Toonami way back in the day, with my first experience being Cowboy Bebop. Now, it wasn't until later that I learned that Gundam besides Gundam Wing also aired on Toonami, such as the original Mobile Suit Gundam. But because my Toonami viewing was cut short right as Moltar was retiring as the host of Toonami, because my mom was a fucking turd,
You big fat bitch! You big fat bitch!
I was left unable to view a lot of what Toonami had to offer for a few years, and could only really ever sneak a few glances at what was airing when I was home alone. And yes, I mean that Moltar.
Today at 4, Toonami's got a brand new superstar. I think I have a crush on her.
14, Moltar. She is 14 years old. You are one freaky dude, my boy. What this meant was that I was never able to catch the original Gundam being aired there, and thus, come sometime in 2001, with the advent of Cowboy Bebop, I also caught my very first experience with the original Gundam. For me, this was a very nostalgic time. So nostalgic that every now and then I go back to listen to the original opening to Stardust Memory several times in a year. Man, that show did a number on me for some reason. Probably because I was fucking screaming at the TV for why Uraki wouldn't fucking eat his goddamn carrots. I'd stay up really late past my bedtime just to catch the anime they had playing there. And there was always something about that old Mobile Suit Gundam commercial that really piqued my interest. For a while I was watching the show, and eventually I stopped for a while till I was able to catch it again at a later point elsewhere, but during that time, during my craze for Gundam, thanks to the likes of the original, Wing, and Mobile Fighter G, I caught something one day while looking at the video game section of my local video rental store, back when they still had those. There was a game in that section of the store that somehow got rid of all the Minovsky particles in the air, allowing me to catch it with my radar. And that game was Mobile Suit Gundam Federation vs. Zeon. And this is my review for that game, as well as the Gundam games I've had the pleasure of playing in my youth. So get ready, the white base is under attack. Get in your Gundams and your gun cannons. Now if you're piloting a GM or a gun tank, then get the fuck out of here. Only cool mobile suits are allowed. Released back in December 6, 2001 on the arcade and on the PlayStation 2 in Japan, the very first game in the Gundam Versus series was released to the public and eventually made its way over to the States in the year 2002 on September 9th. It took the Universal Century era of the Gundam franchise and packed most of the original One-Year War into a tight, jam-packed package, where you could take on the role of a nameless, faceless soldier on either the Federation side or the superior Ubermensch side of the Zeon Elite. I think we know which side I prefer. The game had a collection of just over 30 mobile suits for you to use, dividing up among the two opposing factions, and sported around 15 or so playable pilots. Also divided up based on the factions they belonged to in the original Mobile Suit Gundam anime, that you could use in Versus mode or arcade mode, aside from whatever faceless, nameless self-insert you chose to make. In campaign mode, this is where the story mode is. You'd go on missions that would have varying levels of difficulty, ranging from easy to downright fucking impossible that you might actually have to be a new type to accomplish. And that's where the problems come in with this game. It sounds fun and all on paper, it really does, and in fact it can be fun. A lot of fun, just on the fact that you're playing as your favorite mobile suits, and your favorite pilots in arcade mode. But in all honesty, this game by itself can be the biggest pain for a Gundam fan to play. The first glaring problem you find in Fetty Scum vs. Zeon Supreme is right here, the story mode. The fact of the matter is that when playing the story mode, you'd kind of expect to actually play as certain characters. I get the appeal of playing as your own fanfiction OC, I really do. I got it when it came down to doing that in games that have character creations like Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2. But at least in those games you had a certain degree of interaction with the characters from the Dragon Ball canon. Here, there's very little to none at all, in terms of the cast even recognizing your existence, besides barking orders at you like a master to his dog.
Woof woof!
The most interaction you can expect is a tiny bit of praise from your enemy.
He's good. What?
The constant order to launch, with no confirmation from your player character that they're even listening, and that's about it. Does Char have maybe a bit of dialogue asking who you are, and you get to respond in some way?
Nope.
Is there even a bit of story relevance for doing extremely well against the ace pilots in the story mode?
Mission complete! Please come back.
Hey, hey, hey! What about me? Huh? I fucking killed that guy! Me! I killed that motherfucking ace pilot! So what about me?
Who are you again? Characters have no extended interactions with you at all. You're not rewarded very much at all with anything for doing well, with the most you can expect is maybe a new mobile suit that barely helps much at all. But anything of decent substance to the story mode, being a story mode and all, is completely out of the fucking bag. But that's just the story mode's bare bone issue. This mode has what they call ace pilots, and while you can fight these same ace pilots like Amuro Ray, Char Aznable, Rambaral, and others in the arcade mode, you'll be damned if you think you're going to be face-fucking any of them with your mad lad skills here, son. These ace pilots show up in certain missions and make it nigh impossible to survive unless you get lucky, let alone kill them. Considering how they may as well have more than 10 times the HP you or anyone else has, and can soak up damage from even the most powerful of beam weapons, and deal more damage than you can to them or anyone else. This makes completing some missions downright impossible if you're not required to merely survive, and actually have to do some legit fighting. And by fighting, I mean randomly shooting a beam rifle at them in the hopes that it hits them, with them unfairly being able to dodge just about anything, with you not being able to dodge even a grunt's weapons without taking hits more often than people throw around the memes of Bright slapping the shit out of Amuro.
Oh yeah!
Which is another problem outside of the story mode, the gameplay. In Mobile Suit Gundam Federation vs. Zeon, you're going to be using mobile suits with varying amounts of weapons. Some have at most 4, while some may have only just one main weapon to select from, and a secondary weapon that it might come naturally equipped with, regardless of the choice you make, like the Gyms with their Vulcans, or Gun Cannon and its, well, cannons. But the one thing they weren't equipped with is a reliable way to hit mobile suits without getting a face full of a Zaku bazooka. One of the biggest problems is the unreliable controls and how the battles are really sluggish. I get that mobile suits were never known for being good at running really fast, and in any Gundam series, there's the chance that a pilot becomes so good that his mobile suit is too slow to respond to his controls. But in this game, the moment I played it, I could feel that way about any mobile suit. Want to dash sideways to dodge an enemy fire? Sometimes it works and you think it's just you. Until you see all the amounts of times the Gundam takes the amount of time to respond that it would for me to take a piss in a bottle. There's also the chance that there's multiple enemies around you, and one of them is already launching a giant fucking ball of explosives at you from behind, and no way to really know for sure exactly what angle they're firing at you from. Hell, even your own weapons sometimes take multiple clicks to get it to fire, and when you're fighting against ace pilots, it becomes even worse due to these sluggish and unresponsive controls that make you feel like you're Zex Marquis trying not to get himself killed in an outdated Tall Geese.
Goodbye, Tall Geese. Hello, Wing Zero.
Nigga, what? I thought you loved me. You was my baby. My fucking cinnamon apple. And you gonna leave me for some fucking dumbass nigga? For some dumb nigga?
Technology!
Sometimes it's not even a battle against the ace pilots, and more so a battle against your own controller that makes it as hard as it is fighting them. Let alone the almost never-ending supply of cannon fodder that you're inevitably going to get killed by at many points. The arcade mode is where the most balance is. Enemies excluding ace pilots take a little bit less damage from your weapons than compared to campaign mode, but there is a better balance to HP, including ace pilots, so it only takes about 2 to 3, sometimes 4 shots to kill an enemy, even in their best mobile suit. However, while you have sluggish controls, the AI still can do all your maneuvers with no issue whatsoever, still making it almost impossible to reliably hit anything. God forbid you goad them into attacking you though, just so you can get a single hit on them. It would also be easier to play if you could just do some kind of damage to them while they're down and getting back up. But no way, dude. That's not the man's way to play. You're not a warrior if you do that. That face when the Gundam gets downed for good by a normal non-commander type Zaku and his dinky-ass Zaku machine gun. Another big problem is just the overall lack of mobile suits. It has more to offer than the other 2 games that I'm going to be listing here, but it's just so lackluster considering how you're pretty much limited to mostly grunt units in the Federation side, and a bunch of mobile suits with lackluster weapons in the Zeon side. The majority of the time that you're battling the Federation team, you're probably going to be using grunt mobile suits just to recover health for the mobile suits in the campaign mode that have beam weapons, like the gun cannon and the Gundam. The gym, on the other hand, can go fuck itself with that tiny-ass beam spray gun. On Zeon's side, you have a pretty okay selection of mobile suits, considering how Zeon had a much larger selection of mobile suits at the time of the One-Year War, but they all have some pretty garbage weapons. Limited to worthless, solid-based ammunition weapons like the Zaku machine gun, the Goof and his goofy-ass lead fingers, maybe some explosives like a Zaku bazooka, and some beam weapons on some of the mobile suits. But even some of those are terrible considering how some of them are just big walking mobile armors that may as well be with a sign that says, "Please hit me, I'm too fat to move."
My mom, sometimes she'll call me a fat ass.
It's to a point where the mobile suits, regardless of how you approach a situation, are pretty much worthless, and some of them have a specific weapon that you may as well stick with as your one and only weapon of choice. One such example is the Gundam. If you're selecting the Gundam, which this actually carries over into the game known as Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, then there's only one weapon to go with. Hyper Hammer, 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 wham! Even when you're going with something like the Zaku 2, the only weapon for me, when not using Char's personal Zaku 2, has got to be the missile pod cannon. These missile pods seem cool, but the Magella top cannon? Fuck, I can barely hit anything with it. It's like trying to aim from 50 meters away at some guy's wart on his neck. And what makes this even worse is that you can't bring certain mobile suits out into some parts because they're not fit for fucking space. So you're even more limited in what you can and can't do. God forbid you ran out of energy for most of the mobile suits on the Federation side, and you're forced to use a ball. Surprisingly though, the gun tank in this game is actually the best one, at least on the Federation side. For some odd reason, most of the time, the gun tank seems to hit its mark. But it's slow as fuck. It baffles me how you can bother to make a fat fucking mobile suit that can barely fucking move like that and expect it to do well in a war, where you have so many mobile suits that can move around and just beam rifle the shit out of it. But that's just that. I did have fun with this game when I was playing it back in the day, I just didn't have much choice. And it was at least comforting knowing I can play as the other characters in the arcade mode by inputting their names in all caps in the name input selection screen. But it's just really bad. right down to the bad sluggish responses to my controls, the lack of any interactions with canon characters in the campaign story mode, the awkward 2-player single-player option provided in arcade mode, and the overall lack of deferring mobile suits and such that can get boring really fast, and even down to the retardedly high difficulty of trying to fight ace pilots when they can absolutely destroy you no problem. If this game was given an overhaul on the mechanics, it might be more tolerable. I could deal with difficulty and a lot of other things if the controls had more expertise put into their craft, but they went with, let's make a Gundam game, and make everyone not just be a grunt in the 1-year war, but have them die like grunts too. So maybe you didn't like Federation vs. Zeon. Maybe my first choice with a Gundam game was crappier than F91's reputation. Well, don't give up yet, because there's another Gundam game I played, and it was, about as different an experience as someone going from eating turds to someone eating turds covered in honey and sprinkles. Released before Federation vs. Zeon, but played second by me, it was odd. Journey to Jaburo's first difference that you can take note of is the fact that unlike Fedi vs. Zeon, you actually play a story mode that feels more like a story mode in the traditional sense. Do you tire of the endless amounts of missions that really have no weight to the actual story, since you could lose tons of them, blow up in your mobile suit, and yet still be unable to die and forced to trudge onward through missions that offer no glory? Well, you're in luck. In Journey to Jaburo, rather than playing the role of some faceless grunt who has no purpose other than dying, you play the role of the main character of the 1-year war, Amuro Ray, aka the guy who everyone loves to see get pimp-slapped by Bright Noah.
What would you do if there was a child right in front of you?
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
You go through the missions, selecting your favorite weapons to use for the Gundam, and you battle Mobile Suit after Mobile Suit in an epic struggle to well, okay, so maybe the battles aren't all that epic. The problems with the story mode is that it's incredibly short. The length of the story mode is almost as short as War in the Pocket's episode count.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
And that's pretty short for a story mode. Granted that it's not hard to complete at least, most of the time, but it's pretty short, coming in at like 9 missions in total. The missions themselves, as I said before, aren't even hard to complete for the most part. There are some that are unreasonably annoying, but for the most part, it's pretty easy. In fact, I'd argue that it's way too fucking easy. Almost every enemy in this game is like a glass cannon for the most part, with most grunts only taking like, 3 to 4 hits to take down, and if you're having trouble hitting them, well, just jump. That's right, you heard me. Jump. The biggest offense for me in this game is how often I find myself just boost jumping my way up into the sky and raining down beam rifle fire to the enemies down below. Other times I might be faced with too many enemies though, all around, and the controls in this game is atrociously worse than in Federation vs. Zeon. While in Federation vs. Zeon the biggest problem is the lack of a reliable way to lock on, and enemies that can barely be hit, the biggest problem in this game is the movement and responsiveness to any kind of input. One such example in this is the turning in this game, which completely obliterates physics and ends up looking like you got a rollerblade on one leg, causing it to slide, and the absolute trash reaction time for your melee weapons. You're supposed to be able to do a 3-hit combo with the Gundam's beam saber, but it takes several attempts to even get a second one to go off, even if you time it perfectly. And keep in mind that was only released a year before Federation vs. Zeon. Trying to hit anything in this game with your melee weapon is like a guy with arthritis trying to swing a baseball bat. Half the time the only reliable way to get things done is to get up real close and use your special move on the guy, which the shitty controls is probably the only reason they included a special move. So yeah, use your special move. At least if the special move is using a beam weapon or some kind of projectile that has some weight to it. Gundams like the Alex just shoot a fucking Gatling gun that does less damage than the standard beam rifle. And in the ground Gundam's case, it's just his dumb dingy little chest Vulcans that may as well be you using the Vulcans. Good luck trying to hit anyone with it though from any distance other than point blank, or hoping your opponent just keeps running at you, because it forces you to deactivate your lock-on to even use the special move. Because the chances of you hitting anybody with the Alex and its Gatling gun, or the ground Gundam and its chest Vulcans, are pretty fucking inconsistent. The one thing I will say that the game does better in the story mode is that the ace pilots are easier to take down, or at least to get them to where they need to be to finish the mission. But you don't always get to kill them. Just beat the ever-living Minovsky particles out of their backsides until a cutscene happens, and the mission is either done or moving on to the next part following a cutscene. And while it does have better presentation for its story mode, it's so short because it only supplies you with missions up to the fight with Char and that one Zoc at the end of Jaburo.
Fat ass.
So you're not getting the full package, and at the end it just gives you some short dialogue about the rest of the story.
Moni shout. Oh. Fuck.
But it's not all bad. What Federation vs. Zeon failed at was a lot of things, but one of those things was even having a sliver of interesting content. Or at least serviceable content that a lot of fans would appreciate. While it had you being able to play as characters from the series in a versus mode of sorts, all that really did was give you some random quotes to hear from those characters, and seeing them in mobile suits they'd never normally pilot, and not much else. But Journey to Jaburo was littered with little bits of interesting content, such as a mobile suit gallery, trailers for Gundam anime and movies, including non-Universal Century Gundam media like Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, and a music gallery. But the biggest one-up it has over Federation vs. Zeon is Tactics Battle. Tactics Battle, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like a watered-down version of Federation vs. Zeon's own campaign mode, with only 3 starting missions, and a small amount of extra missions where you fight ace pilots on the Federation side of things. Zeon lacks these extra missions, but makes up for it with a vastly larger selection of mobile suits to pick from. This sounds pretty garbage if you look at it from just a glance of how many mobile suits to use and how many missions, but the real winning factor is the immersion. Unlike in Federation vs. Zeon, where you're just given the cold shoulder most of the time no matter how many loads you blow from your beam saber into Char's mouth, here, again, as a nameless grunt, you're actually greeted with words of praise and adulation for doing as good as you can, even given a few special congratulations from important people like Giran Zabi or Bright Noah.
Oh yeah!
It's especially rewarding when you have the entire female cast in the game fight for your attention just to give you praise in that more modern, luscious art style.
Congratulations, Ace!
Tits. Hooah! Pussy. Hooah! Fucking degenerate.
But alas, the gameplay still hampers the experience of just about every mobile suit. While you do have different ways to approach battles based on the mobile suits you use, it gets incredibly frustrating just trying to hit anything without having to rely on that jump maneuver I told you about, if you're lucky enough to have a beam weapon. And you might end up taking more damage than needed, or more time than you care to give waiting for a new episode of JonTron to come out, just to 100% the entire thing.
10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, best game, best game.
but at least it's more rewarding and with a bit more extra content to show for. I would never have found out about half the Gundam anime they showed in their trailers if it wasn't for this game coming into my possession. I would never have discovered 0080 if it were not for this game. So fuck this game! I didn't need to see Bernie die! Okay, so, fuck that game.
Oh, yeah.
It ruined my childhood after I got to seeing the masterpiece of a fucking heart-wrenching show that is War in the Pocket. So maybe you're not interested in a game that assisted in ruining childhoods. Maybe strategy is more your forte. Maybe you can't stand the thought of fighting for the Fetty scum. Maybe you're a space noid who wants to fight for the chosen people of space.
Well, you're in luck, motherfucker! Welcome to the ranks of Zeon! You've been chosen to join the elite Midnight Fenrir Corps, formed by Cassilia Zabi's awesome tits themselves. You'll be signing up for the pure action and adrenaline with unadulterated blood and glory of the 1-year war. All under the watchful eye of Lieutenant Garrett Schmitzer, the man who fought for a week before having to leave his post.
Hey, where are you going?
Look, okay? No, fuck you. I'm leaving, okay? This script is shit. I'm not doing this shit anymore.
No, dude, you gotta do this, okay? We're paying you to fucking do this. What are you doing?
No. Look, okay? I'm not doing this shit anymore. Okay, this script is shit. This is garbage, okay? This is total garbage. Okay, you're not paying me enough. Zeon's not paying me anywhere near enough to do this fucking shit.
Well, you know, Zeon's probably gonna fucking kill you if you don't fucking do this, okay? You're paid to do it. So, what are they gonna do? It's like treason or some shit.
Okay? Fuck you. Okay? I don't care. I'll kill myself.
Get your ass back here and do it.
Okay, look. Okay, no. Fuck you. I said it already. I'm done. I'm not doing this shit. Okay, you're not paying me enough to fucking advertise for this, what? Basically the Wolf Brigade. Okay, the Wolf Brigade. Fuck you. I'm gonna go drive myself off a cliff or some shit.
So, Mobile Suit Gundam Zeonic Front.
Zeon Akbar!
Released a few months before Federation vs. Zeon, this was a game that I actually spent far more time on than the prior two. I spent more time on this than the Federation and Zeon spent going to war with each other. And what this game did right, when compared to the other two, was down to a few things. The first of which is, no joke, the fucking gameplay. While the other two were an open mess of third-person shooter games that were supposed to make you feel like a new type, only to have you end up feeling like a kid with Down syndrome trying to whack a piñata, or in this case, shoot it, Zeonic Front was essentially a game that did the one thing it did, and it did it well. Sure, it had its problems here and there, but most of the frustration I had with it was down to my own failures at understanding certain aspects. Zeonic Front essentially plays as a sort of real-time strategy game where you man 3 mobile suit teams max, and then have them embark on operations all under the guise of the Midnight Fenrir Corps, and you would basically have the option to set up all kinds of things, like attack routes, listening to your own team give out hints and tips, mobile suit teams that you would deck out with extra accessories to make the missions go easier, and the option to command your units in real time to change to different patterns, like attacking and retreating, or basically avoiding enemies while proceeding with the mission. You even have a semi-auto function which plays okay, and is sorta like an autopilot. It does take a bit of time for your teams to register where to go next based on your plans, but it works relatively well. While its collection of mobile suits might not be any better than the previous two games, it makes up for it in this real-time strategy aspect, and the versatility in how you can approach certain operations, and what tools you have at your disposal. And through repetition and grinding, you can unlock better mobile suits and more equipment to use for them, as well as more pilots. The few points of contention I have are limited down to issues regarding the durability of the mobile suits, and the clunkiness of the radar system, and again, like Federation vs. Zeon, some aspects of the lock-on. When playing the game, I've always noticed that even the simplest of attacks can do a huge amount of damage to your mobile suits. You're essentially a glass cannon cosplaying as an iron beast. Most of the time, even the slightest hit from even the simplest of ammunition at your enemy's disposal can make you go from looking like an ace pilot all the way to a simple grunt. Like Jean. And the sad part is, it could even come from a dingy tank. This, coupled with how the radar system works, can make it that surprise attacks occur way more often than they should, for all the wrong reasons. Sometimes, even when swapping between the different radars you have, which you can do to get better range, you don't notice the enemy on the radar with no sign of an enemy being there until he's already got a clear shot at your back, and most of the time, shots from the back are a one-hit kill in most cases.
So you just thought you could disrespect anime on my timeline? And get away with it, you motherfucker!
Fucking weeaboos go to Japan and be like,
where are the subtitles?
How am I supposed to see the goddamn enemy when my radar won't even show him unless he's right fucking in front of me? Or a mobile suit being right behind me, ready to plow my ass and use me as a condom to fuck another mobile suit with? The radar needs to be reliable 100% of the time. Not in that you should never have to switch radars, but that one of the 3 radar systems should be reliable and actually show an enemy when the other radars fail to do so. You shouldn't have to switch multiple times between these systems before they actually work. They have one job each, and they should be able to always do that job. A game's difficulty should never boil down to whenever the fuck its mechanics feel like working. In fact, sometimes this game is downright unrealistic. In the first mission, you can't even manage to outrun the Big Trey's guns when they fire at you, even if there's no logical reason for why you got hit, when you're so far apart from the actual bullet. You're literally not allowed to dodge these cannon shots at basically instant transmission to wherever you are, no matter how fast you run. They don't even tell you if it's a goddamn heat-seeking missile, so you're just gonna wing it and run up in front of them. But it's not impossible. That's where the equipment comes in. This gives you options that work as options. Instead of just switching weapons like in the previous 2 games, it gives you all kinds of things like smoke grenades, which can save your metallic behind a lot of trouble. If you launch something like a smoke grenade and plan it right, you can walk right up to an enemy without even being noticed, and hopefully get the right shot in on them in a blind spot. So just equip the right shit, plan the right routes, and maybe you can even sit back and let the semi-auto system take over for you for the most part. But you still actually have to get close enough to hit them with whatever it is you have. And for the love of God, try not to use melee weapons. They may do a shit ton of damage to a lot of enemies, but fuck it. It's a risky maneuver because it can backfire on you and leave you open to being bombarded by enemy fire. And this is all just about missions. The bulk of the gameplay will probably be spent in the simulator, where you can play simulator missions and basically put the mobile suits that you have through the runner and try out all kinds of things. Even a few Fetty mobile suits, which is neat. But you also for some reason get to use their pilots too. It's gonna be real hard to swallow the pill required to comprehend why Amuro is suddenly working for Zeon in the Gundam, with the Federation's own colors. But still fun. By completing enough of the simulator missions and doing well enough, you can acquire not just the Fetty pilots and their suits, but even some Zeon aces like Rambaral and Char Aznable. This makes for a pretty intense game when you're met with things like a Gundam staring your wimpy ass Zaku down in the face, and you're trying your damned hardest to figure out the right route and equipment to use when confronting the White Devil.
Talk about Chinese people with their kung fu and all that silly chang chang chong talk. I can't understand you. Go back to your country, white power.
It does, however, get unbearably easy if you're using mobile suits that have actual beam rifles equipped to them, which even one of the Zeon pilot Zaku's can use. or using the RX-78 to plow through the enemy fire like it was nothing, and moving faster than almost any mobile suit can even hope to move. The game itself had its fair share of problems, but not to where it was mainly the game being a mentally handicapped cunt, and more so on you, the player, which is what really makes it more preferable in experience over the other two. While Federation vs. Zeon and the Tactics Battle mode in Journey to Jaburo were trying to go for a sort of war storytelling of both sides, in a really bad way, Zeonic Front just decided to go for one side and leave it at that. It did what it did, and it did it well enough that I'll give it a better grade than the previous two games in this list, and that's about all I have to say. There's probably more Gundam games that I've played that I'm forgetting, but I feel like this video's gone on for long enough. So my fellow new type wannabes, I'm Uncle Trigger and I'm signing off. And if you like this video and want to support this channel, you can like, subscribe, join the Discord, and maybe even donate to my Patreon for $1 a month. The funds will go to real-life Gundam development. I swear. Would I lie to you?
Ma, I need an adult.
愛震える愛それは別れ歌拾う骨も燃え尽きて濡れる肌も土に変える